And we are arriving to the last presentation, which is evaluating speech data and technology for Indian languages. And it will be given by Kalika Bali, who is principal researcher at Microsoft Research Labs in India.
First of all, thank you, Joseph and Khalid, for having me here. This has been like phenomenal. I think when scientists and technologists, when they're working, there is a tendency to, focus on the next architecture or the next, incremental algorithms and lose sight of what my ex-colleague, Dr. Kentaro Tayoma says is the use of technology, which is to amplify human potential. And, these last 2 days have been great at refocusing us on what we are actually building technology for, who are the people, what are the stories, where we fit into those stories. So it's been like amazing. Thank you so much. I'm going to talk about our experience in MSR India, a little bit of our experience in MSR India on building technology, collecting data for Indian languages. I'm sure all of you know that India is a multilingual country. We have a lot of languages, a lot of state languages, a lot of languages which are recognized by the Constitution of India. And you would think that, big country, so many languages spoken by millions and millions of people, we would have absolutely no problem collecting data and building technology for all these languages. But that's actually not true. Digitally, most Indian languages, in comparison with the languages, like that you heard about yesterday in most of the technical talks, such as English or French or Spanish, digitally, most Indian languages are low resource. So this is a kind of ranking of the top Indian languages in terms of the number of speakers in millions. This is based on 2007, so it's probably increased a lot by now. And the rank among wiki content, that is like how much Wikipedia content is available in that language. So if you look at Hindi, which is the highest ranked amongst Indian languages, and in the world it has the 4th position. In Wikipedia content, it's only 55. And as you go down the list, it becomes really clear how less resourced these languages are and what our problem is here. So, we've been kind of looking at this at MSR India and also at Microsoft India level on how do we resolve this? Like we do want technology for our languages, and we do not want to, say that, okay, it takes 10,000 hours of speech data to build an English speech system, so let's now start collecting data for Hindi and Bangla and Marathi and Gujarati, and when we reach 10,000 hours, then we'll do something about it. I have to say that when I got into this field, the bar was like 100 hours, and at that time we had a few hours for our languages, and the minute we reached 1,000 hours for speech, the bar's gone up to 10,000, and who knows if we wait for 10,000 hours, we'd probably need 600,000 hours. So that's kind of a moving goal with the way technology is going. It's like much more data hungry. So what we decided instead was to see what we can achieve with a little bit of data. So in 2018 Interspeech, we held this low resource ASR challenge for Indian languages, where we released some data and we asked people to build systems using very little data. So we kind of put out 45 hours of data for Tamil, Telugu, and Gujarati. And we had a test set. We held back some data for testing, etc. And we put it out for the community to build systems. And we have to say that it was extremely successful. We had over 100 registrations, 18 teams submitted, not only from India, but all over the world. And with just this little bit of data, people were able to get very high accuracies. Almost like the winning teams had only 14% word error rate, which is actually pretty good. It's a deployable system, basically. And you can read all about it. We published a paper about it, so if anyone's interested in more technical details of it, they can look at it. This data was also released to the research community, so this is available as on the Microsoft Open Data repository. So anyone who wants to use this data for building more systems or for doing other research, this data is available. It's only 50 hours, but I think the issue here is to see what we can do with 50 hours. We all know what we can do with thousands and thousands of hours. We don't know what we can do with 50 years. The other important thing is that we managed to convince most of the participants in this challenge to put out their speech systems in open source. So they are available for people to use. So, if you ever want to play with these systems or you want to use them, please get in touch. We'll be able to provide them to you. The other issue, so this was on the actual systems, what we can build with small amounts of data. But the other issue was about where do we get this data from? How do we get this data? We still need data, right? And every time you've been hearing this throughout the last 2 days, like, oh, data, oh, data, oh, data, the only bottleneck is data, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And when even I, as a Microsoft researcher, go to people and say, maybe we can do some data collection, everybody is reluctant to do it. Everybody's like, oh, but it's really expensive to collect data. It is expensive, but nobody really knows how expensive. Nobody has done that analysis to say, okay, this is how much it's going to cost us to build a system in a brand new language which is deployable, which people can actually use. Nobody has done that analysis and told us. If you go to commercial concerns like, corporates and multinational companies, etc., they say, oh, we don't want to get into data collection because we have vendors. How are you going to let us know that the quality of data that you collect is of a good quality that we can use? Because, if we have vendors who are going to do the data collection and the quality is not good enough, we don't pay them. And so they better have the data quality sorted out. So one of my colleagues came up with this crowdsourcing platform called Karya. And actually he came up with this platform to basically provide digital work to communities who do not have access to this. So, we all know about crowdsourcing. We all know that there's a lot of this gig work happening around the world. There are micro-tasking systems, et cetera, but a lot of the communities, especially, disadvantaged in some way or the other, they don't have access to those systems. Like, I can't go to a village in India and say, okay, why don't you log on to Amazon or, do some M-Turking, right? We are not only talking about people who don't have access to technology. Even if they have access to technology, we're talking about people who are probably digitally not that literate to access these things. So his idea was to come up with this platform which provides a means to give digital micro-tasks to these underserved communities. And we partnered and we thought we can use this to collect speech data. This is wonderful. And we went ahead and did a pilot sorry, I'll stay with Karya. We did a pilot on Marathi. We just finished this and we've just written a paper and submitted it just now. So I won't tell you everything about it because maybe some of you are going to be reviewers, so you might think I've already heard about this. But the basic thing is we were very successful in this. We managed to collect 100 hours of Marathi data from rural communities, from urban poor communities, people who are living in slums. And when we talk about these communities and we talk about how literacy is a problem, we also forget that a large chunk of these communities are also literate. They can actually read and write. They actually can be data providers for their language. They just don't have the means to do that. Nobody has tapped into that channel and tapped that potential. So we collected this data, but then how do we know how good this data is? Nobody is going to sit and manually evaluate all the 100 hours of data, right? So we came up with a method which kind of speaks to what previous speakers throughout the day have said, of using a related language. So we don't have an ASR for Marathi, so we can't pump the data through the Marathi ASR and do a evaluation of the transcripts. But we do have a Hindi one. So what we did was that we used the acoustic model of Hindi, and Hindi and Marathi are pretty close languages, as you've heard in the previous talk as well. And we used the linguistic, the language model we used from all the transcriptions that we had for Marathi. And we kind of did an alignment and tested it to see if we were getting reasonable match between the data that we had held out and what we got through this system. And we found that, yes, we did. And, we got we got nearly 76% of the data was aligned. And then we did an error analysis on the held out data. And, what we found was that most of the errors were due to people stuttering or, pausing or reading something or missing out something. So these were like the kind of errors that we had in the data mostly. And now what we are doing to address this, we think that those errors are very easily addressable. So what we are doing now is we are incorporating this into a training module for the people who are helping us with this data collection, so that they know that if they pause or they stutter, they have to go back and re-record it. And even this is like pretty high quality data, and we are hoping to release this also, as soon as we finished processing it. This will be made available to the community as well to work on. So this is the summary of the thing, and our results show that it is possible to tap into this. It is possible to use slightly unconventional methods to evaluate what you have, to build stuff with as much data as you can, and probably that can be the starting point for this. I have just one very little story to tell, since the thing that has resonated the most with me throughout this thing is the stories that I have heard from different communities. So we collected, our first data collection was done in a very tiny village, which is in a national reserve in India, in the state of Maharashtra. They don't have electricity, they do not have mobile connections, they don't have radio, they don't have telephone. It's a tiny village of 200 people. And but they are literate. Most of them are high school graduates. Some are even more highly educated. When we did this data collection, we used Pratham books, to do the data collection. Pratham books, if you don't know, is like they publish children's book. They're a not-for-profit organization that publishes children's book. So we used this. Now these people are so starved for reading material. They're so starved for reading material that in the morning, all these women and men would do this data collection on the phones that we had provided them. And in the evening, they would gather the entire village and recount the tales, the stories to the village. So it became like a social event for the entire village that, which I thought was like a very positive effect of what was just like collecting data for technology kind of a thing. So thank you so much. Thanks.